Hello, in today's video I'm finally going to get around to editing this video on repairing this code P1416A Secondary Air Injection System Bank 2 on my now 2001 Pontiac Trans Am. Our knock sensor code was just taken care of just before filming this video, and I'll have that video linked up at the top or at the end of this video. But before we begin, I'll give you guys a quick rundown of this system. This code is related to our air pump, also known as a smog pump system, which manufacturers put into our vehicles to pump clean air into the exhaust system, mixing with exhaust gases to help burn off any unburned hydrocarbons. Well, our system begins with this hose, which supplies our air pump clean filtered air from the airbox, and it goes into the pump, which is mounted down there, which you probably can't see from here. Then the outlet hose comes out on this end and travels up and across the front end. And back to our diverter valve, which is not part of the system on the 98s and 99s, but this diverter valve blocks airflow during deceleration to prevent backfires. From this diverter valve, it splits into two, connecting to our bank 1 exhaust manifold here on the driver's side, and the other end connecting to our bank 2 exhaust manifold on the passenger side. And to control the diverter valve, we got the solenoid, which is controlled by the computer, supplying vacuum from the intake manifold to the diverter valve to open it and close it as necessary. It's always important to know how something works when it comes to diagnosing a problem, in case your problem is something different from this vehicle. Well, now that we got a basic understanding of our system, let's figure out our problem by unbolting this pipe from our passenger side, which would be our bank 2 side. Using a 10mm short socket and a long wobble extension, I'll loosen both of these bolts. Now using the ratchet, just loosen them counterclockwise. Followed by the other. These are now loose enough to remove the rest of the way by hand, but in many cases you may have to use a tool the whole way. Once it's completely loose, be careful not to drop the bolt nor the socket. And now repeat for this other one. With both of the bolts off, just slide out the pipe. We'll now perform our first test to see if we are getting airflow from the pump. There's two ways to do this. We can do it by turning on the car, but it's going to sound like you have an exhaust leak. Or if you have a scanner that allows you to turn on the pump, we can do it that way as well. But I'll start with showing you the way without a scanner. So with our car on, we come back and check for airflow coming out of this tube, and we're not getting anything, but I'll use this plastic in case you can't hear it for reference. Nope, nothing, confirming that we have a problem. Now to figure out if it's our check valve causing this issue, we can disconnect it and test it here at the hose that connects to the valve. To disconnect it, first let's remove this clamp. Using a screwdriver, I push the middle section towards the back, so it allows us to separate it. Now with that clamp off, let's disconnect this hose from the check valve. Now let's perform the same test and see what happens. And right away we can hear the airflow, and you can also feel it. So let's try it with the plastic to show you guys the airflow in case it's too loud. And with this we can confirm that our check valve is the problem. But one thing you gotta make sure when performing these tests is that you hear the buzzing from the pump to make sure that the pump is on. It'll activate on cold starts, so if it's a cold start it should be on. And when it shuts off, it'll sound like this. And this one, for example, ran for 2 minutes before shutting off. This test can also be performed with a scanner if you have one that allows you to activate it. But before activating it, you will need to open the diverter valve using a vacuum pump. But first we'll need to disconnect the vacuum line that's attached to it. Now that it's disconnected, let's connect the hose from the vacuum pump. And now to open the valve, I'll pump it to 15 to 17 in vacuum. So now I activate the pump while leaving the vacuum on the diverter valve. And yet again we got no airflow. Now we check it with the check valve off, but here I'll start it with the diverter valve off with no vacuum to the valve. And right now, as you can see, we're getting no airflow, but once I open the valve by pulling vacuum, you can hear the sound difference. This is also a good way to check our diverter valve if we suspect a problem there. Well, all that's left now is to remove and replace our check valve. Now to remove our check valve, we'll use a 1-inch wrench and a 7/8 wrench. And we'll loosen with the 1-inch wrench by rotating it counterclockwise to remove the valve off of the tube. And another thing that could cause it is blockage in this pipe, although in this case it's not so bad, but you will want to inspect this. Now to install our replacement valve, or in my case, a good valve I had laying around here. Followed by tightening it with the wrenches. This gasket here, if yours is in bad shape, you will want to replace it, but in my case I'm going to leave it since I'm planning to remove it again soon. Well, let's go ahead and install our clamp first, leaving it loose. Followed by the pipe with the new valve. And now just squeeze the clamp on the hose. And now let's do one final check to make sure that it works. And we're definitely getting airflow now. Well, let's go ahead and reinstall the pipe with the 2 bolts. This second one is a little bit trickier. Let's first tighten them as far as we can by hand. Then using the ratchet, let's tighten them by alternating back and forth. And that completes our video. I hope you found it helpful and informative. If so, please click that thumbs up button to support my video and my channel. And please subscribe if you haven't done so.